Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're jumping right into something I find absolutely fascinating. We're bridging a huge gap between the explosive, sometimes wild world of viral body modification trends and the hidden, undeniable physics that literally dictate whether those mods succeed brilliantly or just fail catastrophically. Let's get right into it. 52 million. That is the staggering number of views a disastrous snake eyes tongue-piercing fail recently racked up on TikTok. We're talking about a 19-year-old influencer posting a video showing extreme swelling, migration, and an emergency removal that played out for literally millions of people to see. And the comments, they were just flooded with similar horror stories. But, here's the critical part that the internet kind of missed. Why do these viral trends so often end in the ER? Well, if we look past the aesthetics for a second, the reality is actually pretty wild. We usually want to blame the trend, right? Or maybe the piercer. But the truth is, these failures are predictable engineering disasters. It's literally a textbook case of material science clashing head-on with human tissue. So, here's our roadmap for decoding the human canvas today. First, we've got the biomechanics of viral fails. Second, the titanium grade 5 deception. Third is polymer chemistry, PPR versus TPU. Fourth, the 2026 smart biopolymer boom. And finally, number 5, AI tattoos and skin physics. All right, section 1, the biomechanics of viral fails, or the physics behind the trauma. Okay, so the human tongue is an incredibly strong muscle, right? It endures massive shear force every time you chew. And if you look at the data we've got here, it absolutely destroys the whole snake eyes trend because that shear force exceeds 2 newtons. Putting a smooth piece of metal horizontally through that high motion zone, it yields a massive 60% migration risk. Seriously, 60%. Compare that to a vertically anchored tongue piercing, which sits at about 25%, or a subdermal labret at just 10%. Snake eyes involve dual entry trauma, massive corrosion risks from your saliva, and they honestly just lose on literally every single clinical metric. But here's the good news. Engineers have actually solved this. Studios can slash these viral failure rates by a whopping 80% if they just implement some specific data-driven fixes. We're talking about things like swapping out those smooth bars for grade 23 titanium with a 0.5 millimeter barbed depth to really boost retention. We're talking applying BioFlex polymer coatings to stop saliva from corroding the metal, and even mandating CBCT scans to make sure bone density is actually sufficient before piercing. What you really should take away from this is that safety isn't just luck, it's calculated engineering. Moving right along to section 2, the titanium grade 5 deception, aerospace grade versus implant reality. Now, in the body art world, you'll hear grade 5 titanium thrown around a lot. It's used almost like this aerospace badge of honor, but as an actual implant material, it's a pretty dangerous marketing buzzword. Check out this comparison. Commercial grade 5 titanium allows up to 0.20% oxygen content, but the true medical implant standard, ASTM F136ELI, which by the way stands for extra low interstitials, strictly caps that oxygen at 0.13%. That extra low oxygen is what gives the metal a ductility or flexibility of over 10%. That means it can actually absorb stress. Commercial grade 5, with that tiny bit of extra oxygen, is significantly more brittle. I really want to let that sink in for a second. A mere 0.07% difference in oxygen limits at the microscopic level dictates everything. It literally dictates whether the titanium in your body can withstand daily mechanical stress or if it's going to develop dangerous microfractures. And those tiny cracks, they become breeding grounds for bacteria, and they can even allow metals to leach right into your bloodstream. This microscopic detail is the literal dividing line between a lifetime of healthy tissue and chronic rejection. All right, on to section 3, polymer chemistry, PPR versus TPU, decoding flexible jewelry. So, stepping away from metal for a bit and into the microscopic world of plastics, it turns out that mixing up different flexible materials is causing massive safety liabilities in the industry. Let's define the gold standard here. Genuine BioFlex is a PPR, or polypropylene random copolymer. Now, this isn't just some cheap plastic. It's a highly engineered, ISO-certified elastomer. It actually holds FDA Class 4 implant clearance. It's got a crystalline backbone designed specifically to remain stable when it's autoclaved, and it doesn't leach harmful chemicals into the body. Now, compare that to the cheap knockoffs currently flooding the market. In a head-to-head matchup of genuine PPR against TPU, which is thermoplastic polyurethane, the TPU begins to literally hydrolyze. It breaks down after just 3 autoclave cycles, and when it breaks down, it releases plasticizers and urethane monomers directly into healing tissue. Yikes, right? With the strict new 2026 EU REACH guidelines heavily restricting these plasticizers, TPU poses some major regulatory risks that genuine PPR completely avoids. But here's what really matters when we talk about real-world application. Even the very best polymers like PPR are just part of a timeline. They are absolutely incredible for that immediate post-op phase, around weeks 0 to 8, because their flexibility reduces trauma while the tissue is swollen and fresh. But they're meant to be a short-term bridge. By weeks 8 to 12, you hit a transition window. For indefinite, long-term wear extending into months and years, highly polished titanium is still the only biologically stable solution. Which brings us to Section 4. The 2026 Smart Biopolymer Boom, going beyond passive biocompatibility. Up until now, the best we could really hope for was what we call passive biocompatibility. Basically, that just means the material sits there and doesn't actively harm the body. But you know what? That is changing fast. Look at this massive industrial scale-up. We're seeing a projected 166% production capacity growth in the PHA or polyhydroxyalkanoids market by 2026. Now, PHA is entirely different from older plastics because it's produced through bacterial fermentation, not petrochemicals. It's a genuine medical-grade, inherently biodegradable alternative that actually maintains a completely neutral pH as it breaks down inside the body. And guys, the clinical data on this is just mind-blowing. Medium chain length PHA nanocomposites actively boost fibroblast cell adhesion by 40% compared to traditional medical silicone. Fibroblasts are the specific cells that build collagen and heal your tissue. So we're shifting from materials that the body merely tolerates to smart biopolymers that actively accelerate epithelial regeneration. In other words, your jewelry will literally help you heal. How cool is that? Finally, Section 5. AI tattoos and skin physics, the math behind the ink. So shifting gears from implants to ink. AI-generated tattoo designs have just caused this viral explosion on studio floors lately. But AI is incredibly fast for a reason. Sure, an artist can draft a full sleeve in 2 to 5 minutes instead of hours, but the AI models generating these images, like Midjourney for example, they were trained on 2D ImageNets. They have absolutely zero understanding of subcutaneous biomechanics. The AI completely ignores the fact that human skin, say across a flexing bicep, moves with up to 1.2 megapascals of epidermal tension. And because it completely ignores that physics, 60% of AI-generated tattoo art that's prompted without specific skin stretch constraints is structurally uninkable. 60%! If a tattoo artist just copies the AI output directly onto a client, those thin lines will shatter, the shading will spiderweb right on the joints, and that beautiful digital render, it's going to warp disastrously the very second the client moves their arm. To actually prevent this, artists essentially have to step up and act as engineers. A safe AI workflow requires some really strict parameters. We're talking about exporting at a minimum of 600 dpi to prevent rasterized needle bleeding. You have to enforce a 0.5 to 1.0 millimeter baseline weight so macrophages can actually hold the ink in the skin, plus testing for 2 newtons of force on synthetic skin and doing manual cleanup of the geometry. Artists who master this physics-first workflow, they can harness AI's incredible speed while keeping client regret rates well below 5%. Which really brings us to the ultimate takeaway of this entire explainer. It was perfectly summarized by BioFlex inventor Patrick Poli, who said, ditch the hype, run the numbers. Whether we're talking about a viral TikTok tongue piercing, some buzzy new plastic material, or a lightning-fast AI tattoo, aesthetics alone will always fail if they ignore the actual science. So I want to leave you all with this provocative thought. When it comes to body modification, are you treating the body merely as a canvas, or are you respecting it as a highly complex engineering project? Because the data clearly shows that when we engineer for the human interface, we don't just prevent disasters, we actively help the body heal, adapt, and really thrive. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.